instance with Internet Explorer in order
Right.
to run a windowing system into the NVR.
Yeah, and there are.
Sanford is here, so now we have a quorum.
Yeah. Now that we've already talked ourselves out of the entire open forum.
Oh no, we can still go. Yeah.
Oh, I have lots of questions.
Okay. That's good.
No answers, but lots of.
Lots of questions. Yeah, that's usually where I'm at. Well, we did talk about updates being a little bit bizarre and Edge not surviving a restart on an update.
Actually not being able to restart after an update.
Right.
Turned out it never shut down.
As a follow-up, last meeting, we talked about a problem with overheating where the person was getting a message on their laptop and I got them to get a fan, which they've been using since. And then all of a sudden, HP came up with an update and it fixed the message that was coming up.
Well, maybe it didn't fix the message. Maybe it went into the BIOS, updated it, and changed some of the parameters on how fast the fan should be running.
And there's also.
I don't know what it did, but they ran that update and
sometimes
the message doesn't come up anymore.
Sometimes there's updates that pertain to both battery and thermal conditions that will go in but are not part of the BIOS.
Well, typically I've seen this stuff located in the BIOS because they want it to work across more than one operating system.
Right.
Especially if it's based on how busy the processor is and it figures out my temperature is rising too rapidly. Let's turn on the fans.
Right.
I know this particular laptop likes to cook itself on a regular basis. So if it's above 75 Celsius, then all of a sudden the fan goes into faster mode. If it's below that, it stays in quiet mode.
Right. I have that on one machine, but I had another machine mysteriously turning itself off or not being able to recover from sleep mode. Mm-hmm. And the only option you had was turn off the power for a minute or two, then turn it back on, and then press the start button, and it comes up and works just fine. Well, yesterday I took out the unit outside and with canned air. I cleaned out, particularly around the CPU heatsink fan assembly. Got quite a bit of junk out of there, so that's probably causing overheating that causes it not to recover and power up.
I remember a long time ago when I used to have a lot of hard drives that were like Western Digital. You had to watch the temperature of the hard drive because people were attributing their laptops not responding to the OS, and they would be rebooting their machine and whatever it was. And it turns out some of the older Western Digital drives, the old ATA interface, 2.5 inch, would, when they reached 53 degrees Celsius, would pause all operations. Because at that temperature and above, the recording was not reliable. So it would wait for the system to cool down by basically deferring all requests or holding on to requests and not honoring anymore until it got dropped below 53, and then it would start running cool again. I mean, there was some of the old Dell C600s used to suffer from that. If you took out both of the batteries, ran on power, and then blew a fan right into the open battery connections, then that would cool the thing down so that it didn't run into that problem, especially if you're trying to run SpinRite on the hard drive, because SpinRite would beat the hard drive to crap and trying to fix it, and it would run the temperature right up there.
Yeah, that I know on the SpinRite. You can also get that sometimes just doing check disk with a /R.
Yeah.
It may try recovering stuff so much it'll increase temperature as well.
Yeah, and depending on how big a hard drive it is and how full it is, sometimes check disk would go off to Never Never Land and take a long, long time to come back because it had to do its work in pieces. It didn't have enough memory to operate in on a 32-bit machine.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you had questions. Sid, let her rip.
I always have questions. So as I mentioned, I was blue screening. And so you do your research, try to figure out troubleshooting. And it wants you to go into what they're now calling safe mode, but it's not like evidently the old safe mode. But it says what you need to do is power down, wait 10 seconds, restart. 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 4 cycles.
No, it's 3.
The one I read had 4. It said on
It's
because
always-
he shut down 3, but then on the 4th one, you then supposedly get that.
That's
mode.
the old safe mode, and there are other ways of getting into the safe mode. But sometimes, depending on what the situation is with the computer, you may have to use that start it up, shut it down hard, and start it up again, shut it down hard. And usually on the 3rd try, for all my machines that I've had to do that on, the 3rd time you try it, there's the safe mode black screen that used to be activated by F8.
Oh, so you're just using this to get into safe mode
That's
by doing
correct.
this.
That's
Yeah.
one way of
Ah,
getting in.
okay.
Yeah.
That's one way of getting in.
Yeah.
If you use MS config, you can also set that up to automatically go into safe mode. But before you get out of the safe mode, you have to go into MS config and set it back to normal boot. Otherwise, it keeps coming back to safe mode, safe mode, safe mode until you make that change.
Okay, that was so you're saying for you the 3rd time was the charm. Their support page specifically says 4 times. I didn't end up doing it. I ran out of time on stuff. And as I said, this latest update, it hasn't done that. But their support page says you have to do it 4 times. I don't know. As I said, I didn't.
Did your blue screen information point to any particular hardware or software?
It will give you the error thing, which is a cryptic message that doesn't tell you a lot. It will give you a QR code to scan, which takes you to a generic troubleshooting page.
Yeah.
Not a specific. And what bugs me is it says we're gathering information and then we'll restart. You ever notice it has never ever automatically restarted from that screen?
No, I've actually had it where it does, but usually when you get the blue screen of death, it disappears so quickly, you don't even know what the error was of any information whatsoever. But there is a tool out there or two I've come across recently. I haven't used them yet. That give you the ability to see your errors and figure out where the general problem is at, like say video or CPU overheating, memory problem. In fact, in the last, I'd say 45 to 60 days, I had a memory module on one machine go bad, and the message would disappear so darn fast it wasn't funny, and it took me forever to get enough information to find out, oh, you got a memory problem. Then doing the memory test, you found out which module it was. You take it out, replace it with a good module, and life goes on from there.
If you, as I recall, there was things you could find about the last blue screen message in the event log. I don't remember the filter I had to use, but
yeah, sometimes that's true. But again, you need the filter. Otherwise, there's so much crap to go through.
Oh yeah.
Good luck.
Well, Event Viewer allows you to filter down to the type of stuff you want to filter.
Yeah, start with critical.
Well, most of the time it is. but
Well,
not
that's the
always.
point, is that there's usually a lot of critical stuff that should be coming up to somebody's nose when it's having an issue. And I don't see anything popping up that, you've had like 4 critical issues in the last hour. Never. Not in this OS.
Well, I'll tell you right now, there is a couple tools that will allow you to look at the mini dumps that take place to get a clue of what was going on. Not to get into the details like a tech system OS person would want to know, because there might be a bug that needs to be fixed. It's more to find out what is the problem, where is it at, and is it a driver? Is it overheating? Is it a memory module going bad? Something, and you might be able to debug it yourself and correct the situation. I do that all the time, and I've had times where I've had to use Sid's technique to get into safe mode because I couldn't get up into run mode to set MS config to do safe mode boot.
So you guys are saying that if during Windows shutdown you use your shift key, you don't on the next boot end up in troubleshooting mode?
Not the old F8 black screen with about 10 options: safe mode with network, and safe mode command line as 3 of the main options. You get the new startup screen that wants to check to see if it can figure out why it's not starting it up and correct it. If it can't figure it out, you have to know enough things in command line under troubleshooting to be able to try and correct the problem.
I haven't
my
used the shift key on shutdown, but I'll have to try that next time.
Yeah, that's an option.
shift key gives me between 4 and 6 options depending on the machine, and usually it's the lower right says troubleshoot.
Right.
And then the next reboot, one of the options is more options.
Well, it's startup
Right.
options, and that's to get
Startup
into
options.
safe mode.
And the startup options then will reboot with 8 items,
Right.
one of which is safe mode.
Right. And
That's almost 3 or 4 reboots.
That's a third way of getting into the real safe mode, is when you get the new blue screen that there's been a problem. It tries to diagnose it. If it can't do it, you go into the troubleshooting options, and then there is a startup option module. You click on that, you do a restart, then it brings up an option menu that replaces the old black F8 key menu that gives you the same options of safe boot with network, safe boot with command, and about 4 or 5 other options, just like the old safe boot menu.
Right.
So that's a third way of getting into it. So, Sid, you didn't have to do the other route. You might have been able to go up to that other screen, and I've used the startup options when it can't fix itself to get into safe mode, because sometimes safe mode will correct the problem, but not always. Sometimes you can't even get into safe mode because of whatever problem's going on. That's when you got to. I've even had 1 or 2 instances where I have to take out the hard drive, connect it up as a secondary drive on a other running system, and try and troubleshoot from there to get it up and running.
Yeah, I've done that.
It's a nightmare.
Yep.
Maybe it's me, but in the old days it was fun. I would boot up a version of Hirons. I don't know how many here are old enough to remember the old Hirons boot CD.
It still
and
exists.
I had a flash drive version of it also. Then.
It still exists.
And it runs a baby version of Windows XP.
Well,
Yeah, you
Actually,
can.
actually WinPE, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in a more modern way of doing it, if you've already got your Macrium Reflect recovery key, that's WinRE, which is the recovery environment,
right.
which is the successor to WinPE.
And that's one I've come across fairly recently in the last 2 months that you can do recovery with the recovery key of Macaron Reflect. It lets
Uh,
you do a lot of troubleshooting right there.
Also, you can put a Windows recovery key and installer into a tool like Ventoy. It behaves just as though it's an ISO.
Right. But
Only
how?
it's different from a normal ISO,
Well,
but
I
it behaves as if it were.
well I brought that up about recovery disk. I think it was last year in CCS meetings. And trust me, nobody knows this feature even exists and that they have to have a dedicated flash drive for the purposes of creating the recovery drive to be able to use that feature. I've used that too.
Yeah. This, I believe, relies just on the Windows ISO
Yes.
and the repair options that come from that.
Yeah,
I don't.
it's a WinRE module. It's a recovery module that from within 10 you can create. I haven't checked out 11 if it's got the same feature, but I assume it does.
Yeah.
In the old days, you actually had recovery partitions, at least on HP machines.
Well,
Some still do.
that's most of that recovery partition is like optical disc, obsolete. And the reason for that is within 1 year of buying that new machine, what you've got in the recovery partition is garbage, outdated OS, unless you update the image inside the recovery partition. You want to take a shot in the dark? How many Americans know how to do that?
You know what? I had a tablet that I used. It booted from Wimboot at the time, and it would update its Wim and also update its recovery Wim when you did something like a feature update.
Uh,
Now, they don't make Wimboot anymore.
right.
So you have to figure out how to do it yourself.
Well, there's 10 forum tutorials I have published from time to time on how to rebuild the recovery partition with the latest OS. And I'll lay you 10 to 1 says nobody has paid attention to it, let alone is doing it at least once a year.
Yeah, so that's a good point.
Probably you ought to
So
do
when
it every.
did I'm sorry,
Probably
go
you ought
ahead.
to do it every 6 months because that's when the feature updates come through.
Yeah, it used to be that's true, but not anymore. As of this year, there's only one upgrade. So,
Okay.
therefore, you only need to do it once a year, like in December, as an example, or January. And
Yeah.
every December or January, you would rebuild the image in that partition with the last version released, like 22H2 for this year.
Yeah.
Right?
And that upgrade is now probably going to come sometime in the fall from now on.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's why I say I would wait at least 30 to 60 days after the release, official release of an upgrade, because they've had too many problems the last several years. And so, like by December, I might be upgrading my system to 22H2. That's when, if you've got the recovery partition, that's when you would rebuild that partition with 22H2 also.
And if you use the drive, you should build a new recovery drive then.
Yeah, but there's lots of things here that we're already discussing here. That if there's 1/2 of 1% of the American population that's doing it, it's a miracle.
Yeah, and the problem I have with moving unconditionally to a new version, if I didn't upgrade from a previous one, is losing my connection to my one and only HP LaserJet.
Oh, I
Yeah.
had that
Because if
problem.
I just installed a new OS on it, I lost it on one of the current version. If I upgraded from an older operating system, or I was able to copy the printer database from another system that had gone through that, worked fine.
Well, I mean, I've got an old HP 1300, which they haven't made driver updates for, God knows when. They have generic drivers anymore. If I were to lose the printer, I just reinstall it, and I've got 5 lasers. And two
Yeah,
of them
but
are
the
color.
problem I had was all of the previous printer drivers were no longer secure enough to be installed on Windows 10 because it
Okay.
would come up and said, "I'm sorry, but this does not meet our security standards. We're not going to install it."
Oh, you
Well,
want to hear a story about things, drivers not meeting the current standards? When I got my Windows 11 machine, I could not use most of my peripherals because their drivers do not meet the standards for core isolation
Yep.
and for memory protection. I switched those features off because I literally could not get updated drivers, and if I got updated drivers, I couldn't install them.
well, that 1300, those are obsolete stuff that wouldn't meet the standards, and yet I'm still running a 1300 just fine.
Well, you must have had to turn off, like I said, one of those options
No,
to be able to install it,
no.
or it's already turned off on your machine.
If it is, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, very possible. Some machines don't support it, so yeah,
Yeah,
won't be turned on.
these options, if they are on, if you want to get any older driver that doesn't meet the security standards, if you want to get it installed, let alone run it, you will have to turn off these features. Not just temporarily, I think permanently.
Yeah, core protection, and what was the other one?
Core isolation
Isolation.
and memory protection.
Yeah.
Those are the two settings that I found. They're very easy to find because it'll flash a message saying this is what you violated.
Yeah. No, I didn't get a message that said I violated anything. It just says you can't use this driver.
Well, that's a Windows 11 thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you would get a message if that were the problem. The other thing that happens is ransomware protection in Windows Defender, protected folders, may also prevent things from being modified and updated in the system areas. You temporarily switch that off, restart, because you have to do that in order to get it to turn off, and then do your thing as administrator, then turn it on again, restart, and you're protected again.
Why does that sound so familiar? Oh, you turn off your antivirus and then you do your update and then you turn it back on.
It's a very similar thing.
It's the same thing. It's just coming around to bite us in the tail.
Is that
Yeah.
like turning off your machine, doing something on the machine while it's off, and then turn it on so that it works?
Yeah.
Yep. But once you turn it on, then you're okay. You can't change anything any longer, but presumably nothing needs to change in those system areas.
Oh, yes.
But if anything does need to change or needs to be addressed, then you have to make an exception, punch a hole in it by making an exception. And I've got an exceptions list that's probably longer than my arm.
Yes, there's a lot of exceptions. Any of the tools that I used to use for network stuff all seem to flag. Every time I'd have that drive mounted, I'd have to put the folder back.
Well, what happens with me is now every time I upgrade to a new dot version of something, I have to add the app in, and I usually like to take out the old one just in case. If I don't want to roll back, then I have to modify that list 2 different ways. It's a pain, but it gives us supposedly some ransomware protection.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but you're
I think how many times are they protecting you from something that, unless you have very risky or you can't type website names successfully, would you ever be vulnerable with?
That's this week.
That's this week. I know that's this week. I'm just saying, but
We
I'm
are,
saying there's been, I mean, like, it's like, I mean, that the number of times I've actually seen something where a virus actually was able to be installed on a machine, goes back 30 years for me. Because I've never had anything on my machines ever. But again, I'm very careful about what I search for and don't allow any extensions to speak of. So, I mean, there's less ways to get in. The first virus that I ever saw was on a floppy disk, was on a PC, and it was an Apple virus. So it's unlikely that would have ever done anything. It faithfully reported that there was a virus on the disk and it would infect Apple machines, but it wouldn't do anything to my PC.
Well, I'll tell you, with the updated security of 11 and whatever comes next, it's good for businesses to try and get some protection within the businesses, but it's lousy for most consumers because it's overboard and makes life miserable trying to run your system to do your normal stuff.
It's like, Cronus wants to change its identity from being a backup utility to be a cybersecurity tool.
Right.
yeah, well, that's a different matter. I There also are new security codes for the TPM2, and this means ultimately you really want to limit how many different USB devices, storage devices you authorize. Bootable USB that you authorize, because I think you run out of spots at about 99 or something.
Damn, I would have overflowed it a long time ago.
But anyway,
me
it may be a
too.
very much larger number. But you eventually will run out of spots, and you're wearing out some of the rewritable BIOS areas. So that's where Ventoy helps me out a lot too, because I only have to register the Ventoy USB, not every ISO on it.
Okay. Interesting.
And if you have something that's Windows or Microsoft, it registers itself. It's okay. So
All I know is what was that old tool, USB DView, which shows you all of the USB devices that your computer knew about?
Yeah.
Every flash drive you ever plugged into it.
I usually get messages now and then that I got a lot of USB devices that appear to be obsolete. Do you want to clean them out?
No, I've never seen that one, although maybe I haven't reached my own level of ineptness yet.
Well, it's maybe one of the utilities that I keep on my system that's doing it. I didn't pay attention to it.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of stuff with USB devices, not bootable per se, but communication devices that I plugged in that happened to use a USB interface. Oh, yes. Okay. Any other questions? We've been sort of rambling here, but
Yeah.
go ahead,
yeah,
Sid.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
When did they make the bright decision to turn off restore points by default? I went into system restore because I always used to be able to roll back, and it's turned off now by default.
Yes, at times when you're doing certain updates or upgrades, it will be off until you run something that you're updating. It wants to create a restore point, and it'll say, wait a minute, your restore point is turned off. Do you want me to turn it on? And then it'll turn it on if you say yes.
I've never gotten that option. All I know is I went in there and there were 0 restore points that had never been turned on.
Well, I have apparently some software on my system that when I do any kind of updates with the software, it wants to create a restore point just like Windows Update does. And as soon as there's an attempt to create the restore point, it says, wait a minute, I can't do it because it's turned off. Do you want me to turn it on? And you say yes, and it does it, and then it creates the restore point, and life goes on from there.
I'm pretty sure that when Windows used to ask to create a restore point, if you have disabled restore points, it would go through the motions, but it wouldn't save it anywhere. So then when you went to go look for the restore point, you were sadly awakened by the fact that Windows 10 by default turned it off.
Well,
two other things in Windows 10. By default, it sets aside very, very little of your drive.
right.
And you have to crank it up to be a significant portion in order to save any significant restore points.
Right.
That's right.
In order to get more than like one, if you're lucky.
Well, usually on my machines, I get 2 to 3 restore points, but that's about the max.
I cranked mine up a bit, and I did it in both 10 and 11, and now I can save more than I want.
I can crank it up too as far as that goes. I've done that before, but it used to be that it would come with a ton of space that most people didn't want that many restore points to cover. And usually most people were going in to do the opposite, shrink it down to a more acceptable level and number of potential restores.
Yeah, I think mine, I had, on this machine, I had cranked to 10 gig.
Yeah, the size of restores has gotten larger.
Yeah.
And Macrim Reflect, when I run it, wipes out all my restore points.
Well, it figures
I have 0 left.
Well, it figures that since you got now a backup image, you don't need the restore points any longer. So,
yeah, and yet,
it's a slate, and you start with a new set of restore points.
Yeah, that's what I end up having to do because you can't just put the restore points back.
Right.
Not only that, by default, Hibernate's turned off.
Well, that's been true since Windows 7.
Yeah, I had to go in and turn it back on.
Okay, here's why Hibernate is off. Sleep modes have changed. There are deeper sleep modes now, which have been substituted for Hibernate. Windows now is never truly off. It has something called fast startup. It goes into a sleep state called S0 or S3. S3 is the old Hibernate.
Right.
S0 does not use a Hiber file. It locks every NTFS partition that Windows had mounted when the session was running. If you dual boot with Linux and you use shared partitions, you will hate that aspect of this feature to death. And that's why I have fast startup turned off. I don't care if it takes 2 seconds to boot Windows. I need to be able to use the NTFS partitions that have data in them for Linux. But that's the downside of it. The upside...
Does it lock your remote mounted partitions too the same way or no?
It can. If they're NTFS, it can lock partitions on a USB drive.
Well, I'm just wondering if you had a partition mounted from like a QNAP server and it went to sleep.
That I don't know. I doubt that it does. I think it's purely local.
Okay, because that would be one way I would probably share my stuff back and forth to be on my local server.
Yeah, I think if you were doing it remote or even if it were on another drive, you'd be fairly safe. But it's when it's on the same drive. Actually, it can be on another drive. In my case, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's on an external USB. And that partition also gets locked so that Linux will show it as not writable. That doesn't mean it's read-only. It doesn't mean it's dirty. It doesn't mean the file system went bad. I've had all those things happen.
So when you shut down, you're not shutting down. You're letting your machine go to sleep. But if you do a power off, does it unlock all those partitions, correct?
No.
It doesn't.
It makes a little tiny file. It's not the size of an old hybrid file, but it's a smaller version, which has all that information, and it actually makes it's like setting a dirty bit on a partition.
Okay.
It sets a flag, and it's that flag that tells anybody else, even other Windows, not to mess with it. It's good for security, and it works very well with BitLocker.
Uh-huh.
But if you don't need that kind of security for the other partitions, you better at least unmount them before you shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a weird state. The power brick died on that machine. It's a USB-C charging on it. The brick from my old machine would charge it only if it was powered off. If it was on, it didn't have enough juice to charge it. So sleep mode didn't take it down enough to let it charge. It had to be either in full hibernate or shutdown to be able to charge.
That's why I have this 200-watt power adapter.
Well, that's the one where they sent me a replacement after I sent them a picture of me cutting the cord in half on the old one.
Yeah.
And then they sent me a replacement. The replacement's been working okay so far, but it would only charge if the machine was in hibernate or shutdown. Otherwise, it didn't have enough juice. So I would run that overnight and let it charge. So I'd be up full then, and during the day, I wouldn't be able to charge it. And then the same cycle the following night. I have one last quick question. So I want to let you get on with your topic, which is I have the Intel updater that runs in the tray to update drivers and stuff. It always wants to update the video drive. The question is, it even warns it, it's not the special video driver, for lack of a better word, the machine-specific version. It would be the generic Intel version. Yet they nag me constantly to update that video driver to their generic version after warning me that it's the generic version.
Well, if you want a real headache, Sid, make sure your machine has Realtek audio and Realtek network cards. You will go berserk with the updates.
It does.
It's a Taiwanese plot to overthrow the U.S. Yes.
Yeah, what happens is Windows Update will overwrite the Realtek driver and put in the Windows driver. Then you have to put in the Realtek driver to override the Windows driver. And then Windows complains, you don't really want to do that. You want to have our driver again. And you tell Windows Update, don't ever update my drivers.
Wow.
But the driver's already there because it's part of Windows.
Yeah, again, this isn't the Windows update. This is the Intel.
I know.
Update.
Intel versus your manufacturer specific.
Right.
That will conflict. You shouldn't really have two different updaters. You should have either your manufacturer's updater or Intel decide which works better.
Yeah, this is my overpowered machine. They haven't, which was Walmart, they haven't updated those drivers in 3 years now. So,
well, if you're not getting updates from your manufacturer, can the Intel driver work?
It seems to.
So
but
maybe you're better.
I let it do the update, and the next time there's an update, it starts warning me again. This is an OEM driver, but it's did it the last time and the time before. But anyway.
Oh, so
it can't do the update.
The Intel updater can't really fully override the OEM?
I'm not sure.
That's probably what it is. If you check the driver version, then you should be able to figure out, well, did anything change? And that would be the way to check it. I mean, the other way to do it would be to remove it, but then that's kind of dangerous unless you have a backup.
Check device manager, see what driver is in use.
Yeah. I'll do that. It's further complicated by having two video cards in the notebook.
Oh, two video cards. That's a nightmare. You're going to need drivers for both, and I'll bet they'll be different. And I'll bet the updaters are gonna just
Go berserk.
fight. They're gonna fight each other
Yeah.
because one's gonna update with one updater, another's gonna update with another updater, and every time you install one, it tries to fully override the other. And oh boy.
Open up the laptop, put in one card, do its update, take it out, put the other card in, do the update, then you can put both cards back in, and it's happy.
Yeah, but these are built in. One is the standard Intel graphics. The other one is an RT10 something.
Yeah, but that one's on a PCI bus inside of the laptop under your keyboard. You have to figure out how to pull the keyboard up, and you can unplug him, and then you might be able to update the Intel, and then hopefully the other one is smart enough just to update the RT. Was it 5070, 3070?
No, it's not that modern. It's,
Okay.
It's the 10 something level.
Okay. Yeah.
10,
So, Bob, when you go and do your reboots all the time, or when you shut down, you're always hitting the shift key to shut down?
Me?
Yeah, to do a full
Why?
shutdown?
Oh, no. Shift shutdown in Windows 10 and 11 goes into troubleshooting mode.
Well, no, that is supposed to do a full shutdown.
No. Not in Windows 10 or 11.
I thought it was shift restart.
There is no shift restart any longer. They've changed all of this, and shutdown isn't a full shutdown. The way to get a full shutdown is, in fact, to call up a routine that does the command line version of that.
There hasn't been a full shutdown of 10 if you've got fast boot running since way back in the early days of 10. The fast boot automatically overrides it and really only puts your system to sleep, even though it looks shut down. And then this way, with the fast boot on, your system comes up quicker and you're ready to start working on it. Versus if fast boot is turned off, then you get true shutdown.
So how are you unmounting all of your volumes that are shared? You got to manually unmount them?
I turned off fast startup.
Understand.
It isn't that much faster, and there are many reasons why it's better to be able to get a full.
Excuse me.
There are many reasons why it's better to be able to get a full shutdown, even in 10 and 11.
Right.
Some updates just simply work better if you do. Again, there's this thing with Edge where it's never fully shut down and it doesn't fully update, and then you can't launch it. That is best solved by fully shutting down.
Right.
Not going into hybrid sleep or modern sleep.
Okay.
By the way, hybrid sleep is the one that uses S3. Modern sleep is the one that uses S0, which is a deeper sleep.
Yeah, you got the old S3, S1, and the new S0 settings.
And what was S1?
S1 was an early, I think, 8 p.m. Sleep mode, if I remember.
So it could restart itself. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember all the details because it's been passé for God knows how long.
Okay. So
Yeah,
what are you showing there, Sid?
That is I looked. It's the GeForce GTX 1060 and the Intel UHD graphics 630 are the two videos in this machine.
So you're showing in the device drive, device manager.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the built-in one though, is it? The UHD?
They're both in this notebook. That's actually HW info.
There are models of laptops that have a discrete graphics card in them along with the integrated version. But in desktops, as soon as you put in the discrete graphics card, it disables the onboard one, so there's no conflict with driver update like you're reporting. So that feature apparently doesn't work on the laptop.
It actually can use both drivers at the same time.
Wow.
Yes, I can actually
On a
assign.
desktop. On a desktop, you can use both drivers, because it doesn't always, it'll try and put your main Windows screen onto the, well, whatever it thinks is the better one, but both ports can be active as an alternate display.
I've never been able to do that.
I think I had that work on one of my machines. I think,
It came with a utility that allows you to
Maybe that's
define
what it was.
apps to run on each one.
Yeah, because I had a gigabyte motherboard that had the built-in video, and I also have a GTX card as well. But that was with Win 7. I'm not sure about Win 10. So
This is Windows 11. This is the
Yeah.
Windows 11 that on a machine that says it couldn't run Windows 11. And then a week later, when it booted, it said, "You're ready to upgrade. You want to upgrade to 11?"
Well, you might have gotten in updates the prior time that now allow it to be compliant for 11.
no, it's going to surprise you around Christmas and said, "We told you we wouldn't run Windows 11. Now it's not dead."
Well,
Is that supposed to be Merry Christmas?
My old Insider machine, which is an old AMD chip that's absolutely not 11able, has been running 11 now since way in the betas, and it keeps saying in the setup, you need to roll back to 10. You don't support 11, but it just keeps working with 11. Fine, it's never stopped anything.
I've got two machines that go back before 2010. I am running 11, including the machine I'm on right now. It's unsupported, but they run fine.
Yeah, until that next release comes out.
No, I just got an update yesterday on this 11. Everything's working fine so far. Now,
Okay.
whether I can get the 22H2 to go in, I don't know.
Yeah.
By the way, getting back to can you still use the full shutdown command from the command line when fast startup is enabled? Yes, you can, and it works. You
Okay.
can make a desktop shortcut for it and just make a button out of that.
Right.
Make your own button.
I might do that.
That's an old trick, Nat, for both a shutdown and restart. You make shortcut buttons on the desktop and click whichever one you want to do the shutdown and or restart operation.
Yeah, and if you're doing things like Windows Update, or especially if you're doing anything like a driver update, it's a good idea to use that true restart button that really does shut it all the way down and powers it all the way up again. In my case, I don't have to do that because I have fast startup turned off. It's just more Linux friendly to be able to do that.
Okay. Shutdown /S/F/T /0. Boom.
Yeah, the command line thing.
Yep, I remember that one. It's been a long time since I had to use that, though.
Yeah. Same for here. It's got to be 10 years since the last time I used that trick.
Yeah. But anyway, you can just make a desktop shortcut that does that and give it an icon, and away you go.
Good. Okay, well, then I will use that as a segue. Any other questions before we go into presentation?
Nothing that important. I've got other weird stuff, but nothing that important.
You have always got weird stuff, especially after Amazon sale day. Yes.
Well, I run too many weird configurations, which is always the killer of life here. If there's time at the end, I'll toss out a couple home automation questions. I put in some Wi-Fi bulbs.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's do this. Okay. Planning for obsolescence. What to do when your technology sunsets.
I keep going.
Yeah, right. Well, how dependent on technology are we? Okay. So when the new phones come out and infrastructure is available, do you start planning to replace your phones?
Not so
At
far.
least you look at them, okay, but and how long do you keep your car before replacing it?
Average American, 12 years.
And I got one that's going on 12 plus and another one that's 10 plus.
I've got at least one that's about 21 years already, and the other one is more than 10 years, but I don't remember what.
And does either one of them have OnStar?
Nope.
Yeah, then you're fortunate.
2010 Prius, 100,000, no, almost 170,000 miles.
My 2010 Prius only has 84,000 on it. Not quite, 83 and change.
Well, you
But
were
it is
asking
getting 55 miles a gallon. So,
you were asking how long we kept them.
yes, I was. When did you last replace your Wi-Fi router to get new features you couldn't live without?
Well, I get mine from the cable company.
Well, okay, then did they replace it for you? So they upgraded
No,
technology.
they've never upgraded mine.
They've never upgraded yours. But you probably got one at the time when they offered 802.11ax as the default for the 5 gigahertz, correct?
Gosh, it was 6 years ago.
Yeah, probably was about then, was the 802.11ax. They started, you can tell if you do a Wi-Fi scan and you see this thing using all kinds of channels. That's the only way they can get to their gigabit speeds is to use AX on a wireless link because their claimed speeds are faster than the gigabit link.
I have a feeling I'm not even that advanced.
Yeah, I'm not that advanced in
Okay.
my unit Ethernet, and they haven't offered. Usually, you have to have some kind of a problem, or you call them and say, "Hey, I want a new router," and they'll either ship it out or a service person will drop it off. They may install it for you if you want.
I haven't used a Comcast router in a very long time and a cable modem. But I did have a request from them to upgrade my cable modem because they told me they were obsoleting it because they wanted to use more up and down channels. And my older router only supported 4 up and 4 down. And they said, oh, you got to have a newer one. So I got one that has 8 up and 32 down or something, maybe 16 up and 32 down. But it's about as fast as you can go and has multiple Ethernets into it to be able to drive it as fast as you'd like.
The one they want to replace with in my area would no longer allow the traditional DVR. You would have cloud DVR and streaming.
Ah, okay.
I do not like that idea.
Yeah, they cut you down to only 20 hours of storage.
Yeah, but you can stream whatever's available.
Yes, and then that goes to all the streaming counts against your total, right?
Total bandwidth? No. If you're streaming their stuff,
no. If you're streaming with their stuff, no. If you're streaming with your own stuff, yes.
Yeah, if you're streaming well, you won't stream network, but if you were, then Anyway, on with the topic.
Anyway, as the newer technology becomes available, older technologies are being discontinued by calling them, they're sunsetting those things. So obsolescence happens. I need this on a t-shirt. It's always newer, better, faster. We're attracted to shiny. But should this force us to move to new technology, cell phone technology, none of you have an old NAMPS or digital TDMA phone that works. They discontinued those airwaves and they replaced them with GSM, which have since been replaced as well to wideband CDMA and CDMA, which is now being replaced by LTE and 5G. So why are they discontinuing the 2G and 3G now? So the 3G is supposed to stop at the end of December on Verizon. So CDMA, 3G, gone end of December. You got anything that's talking on it, it's going to stop talking. T-Mobile will shut down its 2G network, the old GPRS, in December 2022 as well. That means if you have stuff that's connected via a phone connection, wireless phone, you should check to see whether or not your vendor has said it's being discontinued. So, and the reason they discontinue it is because by getting rid of some of the old devices that used a lot more bandwidth, they can free up that bandwidth so that they can offer faster and or more dense coverage on the current cell sites without having to put more cell sites in. So, yeah, better plan on moving it. Sometimes some of the devices also support Wi-Fi, in which case, even though you won't have the telecommunication capability via cellular, you'll still have the Wi-Fi. One of my alarm systems decided they were going to be non-functional after the sunset of 2G. So I got actually it was on AT&T, so it actually got replaced early this year. The new device I have is kind of future-proofed. It happens to have 4G with 5G compatible. Also has Wi-Fi, which I did connect up to my own Wi-Fi. And it also has Ethernet capability in case Wi-Fi somehow is no longer available. OnStar goes away for the most part on all of the older equipment. Anybody who is using the CDMA 3G or 2G systems basically goes nana at the end of December. And OnStar turns into a phone app without some of your abilities to do stuff that you would have normally counted on. They had talked about offering a 5G dongle to plug into the ODB2 port, but after they couldn't get chips anymore, they decided to discontinue that altogether. So if you want to replace OnStar, yeah, you can download the Guardian app and pay $15 a month, but you don't get the interface that shows your tire pressure or communicates the codes directly to the dealer in case you have a check engine light. There are some Bluetooth, low power enabled and Wi-Fi connected dongles that you can interface, but none of them have I found that support reading your tire pressure, which seems to be one of those OEM figures that's hidden within the ODB2 system. My Traverse does not have the on-screen display, so it doesn't display my tire pressure, which would be really nice to let you know that your tire pressure is low. And I used to use OnStar just for showing me, hey, is my tire pressure good? Oh, good. I got to go fill up the front again. So how do you remedy other technologies that already have sunset? So if it's for Wi-Fi, if your device supports USB interfaces, you can upgrade using a dongle to support Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11n, and you can remove those old 802.11b interfaces so that they don't interfere with the new dongle. You either remove them or disable them so that they don't run at the same time. So many times I see somebody's HP printer configured in auto config that's trying to talk via Wi-Fi and interfering with their main router. For devices with both 2G, 3G, and Wi-Fi, you might be able to just use a hotspot and still have your wireless portability restored. It doesn't help you when you go to another country, but at least gets you somewheres. Operating systems go sunset as well. Usually there isn't any problem using the older operating systems, but you won't be able to use common browsers on the older systems. They stop updating for some reason. I don't know why they would want to do this, but they just did. So XP stopped in 2016 and Win 7 was supposed to stop in 2023. So your Win 7 machines, want to lock in some alternative browsers, that's a possibility. And you still can try and use your older browsers, but you might find issues when you try and run on certain websites. But you can have that right with the current browser anyway, where it doesn't work. They still fail in memory constrained systems. So if you only have a Win32 system or only 2 gig of memory, there are some sites you'll never be able to visit. One of them might be Citibank. CitiCard, actually, not Citibank, CitiCard. CitiCard website, for some reason, uses some ungodly amount of space on the browser that it exhausts the memory available on Win32. So how can I move easily to a new OS? Well, if you're buying a new machine, you can upgrade, but the older your machine is, the less likely you can upgrade to the newest OS. And if you start doing a little bit of organization on your own personal files so that you can move them with a simple backup restore file copy, it'll be a lot easier transitioning to a newer OS. And if they're all in a common area, it's much easier to find them and copy them to a new machine. And you have the option to keep files in the cloud, which allows you to move back and forth between computers, but be mindful of using different app versions to edit and maintain those files, as you might run into some incompatibilities when you edit it with the new version of the app and try and read it with the old version. I have found I've been bitten on the tail end on more than one occasion with some of the Microsoft utilities. So how do you plan for sunsets? The alarm systems, well, they go ahead and they'll swap out your radio module, cut the leads on it, put a new one in, and away you go. And I already mentioned that one of my modules that I received, I was very surprised to see all the capabilities that it came with. And hotspots can take care of connectivity for the devices that have Wi-Fi. And also, fortunately, you can still get Ethernet switches that support 10, 100, 1000. But if at some point in the future you only find 100/1000s and you still need to interface to an old 10 megabit Ethernet somewhere with a 10 base T, you can still use a 10/100 switch and then connect that upstream to a 100/1000 switch, and you still have your connectivity. What about device support? We've already discussed this in our open forum, but typically printer support seems to fade with newer operating systems. Installing your printer on an older system and sharing it, sometimes you can continue to use an obsolete device by telling the new computer it is shared, but calling it a similar device which is still supported. HP used to support most inkjets via network when they were explained to the system as a DeskJet 550C. That was usually the subset that would work across all of the HP inkjets, particularly those that had software to run the printer in the driver that was on your Windows machine. They did not work so well over the network when you try to install that driver on another machine. And Chromebooks can be used past their service life, but without updates and patches, their functionality may deteriorate with time. That's a direct quote for looking about the quotes on Chromebooks. And how can you make the transition less painful? Well, by moving into a new phone, you can back up your data and move it to the new phone. Some of these are built in from your vendor that you can do a backup. It automatically keeps a copy in Verizon's cloud, and then you get your new phone and it automatically downloads everything and you're right back to where you left off. Keeping a copy of all your photos in the cloud will avoid losing these should your phone become inoperable. And you can back up SMS messages, can be backed up and restored to another phone. Now, some of these tasks might already be enabled and already running in your phone today, but your mileage may vary. If you go to a completely different provider or you transition to another type of phone, you might find it more difficult to restore some of those things. In other words, if you're on Verizon and you want to go to Xfinity, well, Xfinity typically only runs on Samsung phones or a very limited number of other phones. They want you to use their phones with their extensions loaded into it in order to support Xfinity Mobile.
They work on Apple phones.
Yes, they'll work on Apple, but they don't work on many generic Androids. Even though they're top of the line Androids, they don't work on them unless they're Samsung. So, but again, with the Apple, they're able to load in some of their software. I know Wi-Fi calling typically, and even the Zoom call right now, it's sending packets back and forth. However, I'm pretty sure that none of these voice packets is being prioritized when it goes over the network to be able to tell the server whether or not, if it gets late, they're late, discard it and fill it in with quiet tone, or if it is, if there's too much jitter, you should adjust your packing buffer for the playout. That would be options that they could put into a Samsung release or an Apple that would be built in to support those type of Wi-Fi calling, and you would have a better quality of voice quality on your call. And that is my presentation. So what I can do is we go over to this magic switch right here, chat. And then I go ahead and let's see. I want to send this. All right, come on, there. Oh, I need to change this, everyone. Good, all right. You know, if you do a private message, it doesn't show you the option of the file sending. Okay, I have just put the presentation PDF out there on chat. You can go ahead and pull down a copy. Any questions? Everyone's muted. Okay. Yes, go ahead, Sid. You must unmute first.
Trying to do three things at one time. I was downloading your PDF. I was trying to grab the microphone and unmute all at the same time, which is a lot for my brain right now. I mean, it is. So the question becomes, at what point is it that something is so obsolete that you just need to throw it away? I've never been good at that. I don't. I have stuff that like 2400 baud modems that are still shrink wrapped in their original packaging.
I probably have one or two of those left around somewheres too that I probably should recycle because they're not terribly useful anymore. I was waiting for the zombie apocalypse, but that phone system will probably go out too. I still have a analog phone line coming into this place. So I could conceivably still use, and if I could find something to dial into, I could. But there ain't too many of those left either.
If you're out in rural areas, you may have to rely still on dial-up modems. But
well, dial-up modem or an ISDN connection.
Yeah, and if you have them shrink wrapped still like Sid's talking about, you might be able to sell them on eBay as a collector's item.
That's true. However, if you have one of those modems, what are you calling into?
They don't care.
Yeah.
They are setting up old computer equipment on display, perhaps in their office or in their home, as like a curio.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, that would be something, especially having the sounds so you could hear it go off and like, oh, there, I remember that sound from my childhood.
No one else does.
Are there any AOL dial-in ports left?
I don't know. I haven't tried.
Yeah, I haven't either. I've got an old 56K one that was used, and bottom line is I haven't touched it, and the dust is thicker than the actual unit.
And the ones that I have are probably a little older than that. Old US Robotics HST 9600.
Yeah, I have a couple of those as well. I used to co-sysop their BBS.
Ah.
I am aware of rural areas in northern New England where they do have dial-up.
Oh.
They still use these things.
Okay,
I think
and they may need replacements when lightning strikes nearby.
Yeah, it might be DSL, but it's a dial-up type.
Okay. Wow, that's dating. I mean, there are certain things that I'm loath to part with, like my original IBM PC-1, which hasn't powered on in years. I should power it up and just say goodbye to it. But yeah. It's just something about old floppy disks and stuff like that. This is what it used to look like, kids. Here's what a monochrome monitor looks like.
They don't care.
Where's the PlayStation, Grandpa?
That's right. They don't care about old technology.
Yes, they don't.
And your kids will tell you, just like my kids, throw it away, Dad. We don't want it.
I know they say throw it away, but
throw it away.
I draw the line at tools. When I get old tools, I hang on to them because those things last. There's nothing like an old US made Nicholson file or a cold chisel that was made with American steel that you can beat the crap out of something in concrete and it will still keep its edge. Not
Okay,
like-
so Sid's showing us that there's AOL dial-up.
Wow.
1.5 million people.
Well, AOL was bought by Verizon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that got sold to a private investment firm that also owns the Yahoo that Verizon owned. So both of those were sold to a private investor several years back.
Okay.
By the way, the article Sid was showing says AOL is not dial-up internet any longer. It's identity theft and other services.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's one little sentence further in the article. The number of AOL dial-up subscribers is now, quote, in the low thousands, unquote.
Well, I found that, it's a premium to hang on to your old analog phone lines, but I've never been comfortable with sending specific faxes to doctor's offices with anything other than my own fax line.
Yeah.
Just something about, you're going to use this online fax service. Oh, what are they going to share? Yes. And sometimes I can get the UMA to be able to send the fax through, but not always. So I've hung on to that. At some point in time in the near future, I may discontinue it, but if Social Security goes up by the expected amount next year, I might just hang on to it. Oh, you didn't hear about that one, Rob?
Oh, heck.
The Social Security might go up 8.7% next year.
8 cents?
8.7.
Cents.
No, percent.
Is that US or Chinese?
That's U.S.
Okay.
I thought it was in rubles.
Yeah, no, rubles aren't worth crap right now.
That's what I'm getting at.
Easy.
You know,
when I was there, they turned the little rubles into big rubles, and then the big rubles went down in value too.
You know, a percent is a percent of anything.
That's true.
But anyway, at least we're not in El Salvador where they've been using Bitcoin.
That's got to be rough.
They took a gamble. And
Yeah,
they lost.
they took a gamble, and does that mean housing is real cheap down there?
Well,
There's probably everything is cheap now.
I think Peru is also thinking of doing that.
They were thinking of using their own state-issued e-currency.
Yeah.
That could be.
But as for Bitcoin or other crypto, they considered it, but they haven't done it, and they're probably breathing a collective sigh of relief that they didn't.
I
Yep.
agree with that.
I mean, China's got its own e-currency too, and we're getting one too.
Easy.
The e-currency, however, has the full faith and credit of the government backing it.
Which government?
Whichever government issues it. Well, that's how our good old American greenback dollar is.
Yeah, and it registers back and forth, and right now it's doing pretty good. Everyone wants to invest in T-notes in the U.S., I think.
Well,
The
that's
2-year T-notes, yes, not the 10.
That's different. Our government debt is different because that is valued according to what our Treasury does in terms of interest.
Mhm.
That's a little different from how e-currencies float.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, all my Caribbean currency will be obsolete because it will no longer have the Queen's face in it. This is not funny. This is serious stuff.
Do you have to send it back to get it upgraded?
Well, when I was a kid, we used to have King George VI in our coins, in our dollar bills, and now they're rarities. I have a couple around here. My grandkids, they love them. Ooh, look at that.
I think I have some British pounds with her face on it.
Yep.
Yep. Sanford
Well,
does too?
No, well, yes, I do. But when I was in London 3 years ago, I had some older paper form of currency
Mhm.
that when I brought it to tried to use it there, I got denied to use it any place that I was at because they moved from a paper to a synthetic paper to basically plastic money.
Yes.
Meaning
Tyvek.
it's like it's printed. Well, it wasn't Tyvek. It's actually, well, you could look at it when you see it. It is a type of plastic. It's not Tyvek. Tyvek is really thin, but regardless of that, they went to a synthetic material, a plastic money, and all the paper versions had to be converted. So I had to go to a bank, and then they did it. Of course, they looked
Wow.
at me strange, like, where did you get this money? Why is it you still have this? We stopped circulating this years ago.
FBI.
Okay, I'm
Did
a
you tell him
tourist.
that we broke away from England about some number of years ago?
No, I just said I'm a tourist. That's it. I'm a tourist. I brought it with me, which it was. It was my father-in-law's cash that he had
Mhm.
when he was in London, when he was after well, anyways, a long time ago, shall I say.
Yeah, it's like like some of the paper money that my wife's father has, Japanese peso.
That's not paper money. That's a paper moon.
Maybe it's a paper moon, but it's something that was the script currency I think they put in Japan after the war. After the war.
Well, even if you can't actually use it, I think some of that is collector's.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yes,
Collector's
that's
items.
I have a couple of $2 bills, one before they stopped doing the $2 bill, and one that I got the day before they released the next $2 bill. But I didn't think about going to the post office and having them stamp it the day before.
Anybody got any Susan B. Anthony dollars?
Somewheres, yeah.
And can you tell them apart from quarters?
Not
I have a
easily.
whole roll of them.
Vending machines couldn't tell them apart from quarters.
Yeah, that's right. They were pretty darn close. And vending machines didn't check the color of the coin either.
Yeah, like the second with Gia dollar.
Oh, stuff. He's psychology.
And then older U.S. dollars look different from modern U.S. dollars.
Sure.
Well, if you're talking about the old silver certificates and then the other ones even older, you're talking the larger dimension.
No,
Just a couple or 3 decades ago.
even the silver certificates, there were gold certificates also.
That was pre-1934.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's the smaller bill, not the old big horse blankets.
Yes. Uh-oh, he's digging one out.
He's got something.
He's
by way of
proven
an
that
older-
he's got lots of money.
Yeah.
I know nothing. I see nothing, and I say nothing.
Okay,
Yeah.
Schultz.
Okay,
I
we've
learned
got
the trick of the $2 bill from an old article. They're great for tipping people. They will remember you if you tip with those.
Ooh.
Now that's for better or worse, but they will remember you if you tip with those. They
Yeah,
may
$2
call the police and report you for having illegal fake bills, but they will remember you.
Well, I had some of my more favorite currency I keep has got a springbok on it.
Does it spring back at you?
Yeah, it's about 34 grams.
These
It just-
are
it
the
just-
thing next to me here are internet dial-up providers in 2022. This is the latest. So yes, you can still do dial-up.
Oh, net zero. Okay, AOL. Earthlink is still there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Turbo USA and
Does this
Juno.
give anybody ideas of digging out their old modem and trying it out?
I like that it says speeds may vary.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
first you have to find a landline that's still copper wires.
Still got one. Still got one.
Again, like I say, in northern New England, they still have all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got rid of my last pots to get away from AT&T.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have AT&T.
Remaining.
AT&T has to support it, but I have a different provider that's providing me my service, which is a little bit cheaper than the AT&T rate. When I was paying $80 a month for a pair of POTS lines, I thought that was getting excessive.
Well, before 2010, I got rid of my pots because AT&T, for the little bit of activity I would have per month, wanted $45. I says, forget it. I went with Boppy on the internet service.
You ended what? Vodka?
Voice over internet, VoIP.
Oh,
VoIP.
VoIP. I thought he said vodka.
I wonder how many people still have ISDN.
I'm sure there's some, but it's got to be a dwindling number.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, in the old days, IBM gave each of their employees ISDN lines to call in.
Yes, they did.
And did you see next year, Comcast has said nationwide they'll have 2 gigabit symmetrical service available.
As long as they replace the link to my house, probably, and make it 2 wires or something.
Well, Google has renewed creating their optical cable program that was, I guess, in hiatus for a couple years.
Google kills more stuff than most companies create.
And I know. Tell me about it. They're very creative in some of the stuff that they do, but if the numbers aren't to a certain level, kiss it goodbye. And or it gets merged in with another newer product, and they make kind of a suite out of it, like they're trying to do with Google Meet right now, and 1 or 2 old things. I think Hangouts is an old one. They're merging in with the Google Meet, and I think there's a couple other technologies they're rolling into the same package.
Yeah, I have an old grandfathered in account, and I just got the notice about Hangouts. It said you need to tell your users it's going away shortly. And if you don't, and not only that, you lose all backup ability of old data coming up shortly.
Ooh, that's not.
That's very common. It's kind of like Amazon dropping their AWS storage. Yeah, Amazon AWS storage is going away.
Oh, I know what you mean. It used to be users would have storage.
And
AWS isn't going anywhere, and the users of AWS
just the storage.
still store
It's just a storage
their
package.
stuff.
And Amazon, I think, gave up on it or was going to.
Yeah, they did. They announced that. Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff, now you see it, now you don't.
And they don't make anything easy. I have my old Amazon account that has 35 gig of pictures in it, which, not being a Prime account anymore, is above their allowable limit. So I keep getting warnings saying, we're likely to trim you. They've been saying that for 2.5 years now. We're likely to trim you and you can't upload any. So I now have a separate Prime account. Can I move the pictures easily between them? No. You have to download all of them and then upload all of them again.
Okay. I hope you got a good computer system and network.
And I installed, they have the Amazon Photos app, which is supposed to make it easy to do stuff. It doesn't make it easy to do anything, even update itself.
Yeah, but
Wow.
a lot of that happened with Google Photos too, Nat. When they took away the separate storage versus your
Yeah,
basic
the unlimited
email.
storage at a certain resolution. Yeah, I know that one. I was looking to see what my landline, my POTS provider is. They go through AT&T, but it's Pioneer is the name of the provider, and they'll be changing their name to Clearline or something like that in the future.
Yeah, sort of like wow, I mean, astounding.
Clear Live, they'll change it to. So yeah, but yeah, they plan for these type of things. Eventually, they'll say, "Well, we don't want to support you anymore." But AT&T still had to come out and fix the telephone line when all of a sudden I get buzzing on it, and I get somebody come out and he's looking in the back of my yard for the box for the termination. I said, "No, it's hiding in the front underneath the bush over there." If somebody wandering around the back of your yard looking for a cable box they're never going to find. Yes. Nope, the easement's in the front here.
I don't get me started on that one. When I had my AT&T pots, I would get crackling and hissing and all sorts of noise. And I'd call them and they'd come out and they'd find nothing wrong. I'd say, there's nothing wrong. And the next time, same thing. And it was only when it was wet out
Mm-hmm.
that the
Oh, yeah.
lines got bad. And by the time they came out, it was no longer wet out.
Yeah, they would find, I would get a line that would be bad. They switch me over to another pair. And then I'd run into other issues where they would come out, they would fix something. And because there was no, I would have contests between Xfinity and AT&T drilling through each other's cable when they put a new cable in. So yeah, it was great fun. I watched them, and then if anybody did any work like the in the easement, like replacing the drainage pipe underneath the road, they went and cut everybody's line. So all of that stuff had to be repaired. I remember one time there was about 300 yards of cable that was deployed in the ditch from the neighbor several houses up the street from me, coming all the way down, going around the cul-de-sac, came through my duct and wired into my box as well to extend the line until they could rebury a new one. And all of a sudden I was online, and all of a sudden I dropped off immediately, and I thought, uh-oh. And I picked up my phone, listened to it, it was dead. Like, okay. So I start looking outside, see if I can see anything, and I look up the street and I see the lawn mowing service leaving in a hurry. They had nailed the cable. And so I called them up and I said, we got a break in the cable that's up on top of the ground, come on down. And I ran over there and I brought my tool bag with, and I started matching up colored wires and stripping wires and connecting them together. And then the guy drove up in the AT&T truck. And he said, hey, looks like you got this one covered. Can I get you anything? I said, yeah, you got those quick connects, the glue-ons? Yeah, he threw me a box of them, 400. And he said, yeah, I got another cable that's a 400 pair cable that got nailed over in Quinton. So I left me to my madness, and I went and I kept on matching up all the wires and had them all wired up, and and I basically covered them. And he came back, checked that out, loved it, sealed it up in a trash bag, and left it there.
Hey Sid, are you getting ready for Halloween?
I fractured a finger, so I had to go to the hand doctor, because now there are hand doctors, you see.
Mm.
He didn't remember me. I had seen him in 2014, and I said, wait, you don't remember me? And he said, no, I don't remember. But anyway, so they have these new x-ray machines now that are like flat pads.
Yeah.
And it's like a quick flash thing. And it prints it then, as you can see, right on, you print it out. They could print it on just on paper now. And then they can actually take it and measure angular stuff, as you can see, directly on its point. And and then there's the fingers sprawled sort of out as well, with the percentages and numbers out on it as well. And it's kind of fascinating stuff of what they can do. The day after I fractured the finger, I had oral surgery. And these guys most now have these 360-degree chairs. You sit in the chair, head back, and the whole thing rotates around your head and does a full mouth panorama.
Well, mine doesn't have, I have to stand up and put the bit in my mouth and then the machine moves around me. I don't get to sit in a chair and do that.
Is that a
And they
horse
did have, just a week ago, I had to go and have a crown taken up and replaced. And they used their 3D imaging to make a picture of it. And they also wanted an x-ray, and I hate x-rays. It only worked because I'm the one that held the x-ray film in place while they got the back tooth. And they had to do it twice, but it was an electronic sensor as well that it snapped to.
Yeah.
And so they measured all this, and they're going to 3D print me a new crown. It's not going to be zirconia. It's going to be lithium disilicate, which is supposed to be able to be even stronger than the zirconia.
Yeah, my new teeth will all be cubic zirconia. Right now, I got the temporaries in.
Mm-hmm.
In about 3 hours, they removed all the old teeth, put in the posts, and then they put the temporaries, which they print in house overnight. And then they have a lab in Atlanta that runs 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, printing the permanent ones.
Okay. Well, my doctor can actually print them local in his office,
Yeah,
but he
well, that's
does
what
one
I'm
at a
saying.
time. Yeah.
They do these locally, or these temporary guys. The permanent one, though, they do down in Atlanta.
Did they put you on a high calcium diet so that you can get the bonding for the posts into the jaw?
2 weeks, no, 2 weeks liquid only, 12 weeks soft food. I'm on the soft food now. Which is the most fun thing in the world. But when I was younger, before I went to college, I had 34 cavities, and that was in 1978. So I had those all filled in 3 weeks. They filled all of those. And needless to say, over the years, they got old. They started shrinking, breaking off, and killing teeth. And there just wasn't enough to do to keep ahead of the curve on that. So it was easier to just take
Been there, done that. Yes. I had, when I was 21, I had my wisdom teeth taken out, all 4 of them. And as the doctor was numbing me up for the first one and starting to rock back and forth, he did 2 on one side, and then next week he did 2 on the other. And he said, I hope it breaks off because I like to go in and dig for them.
Ooh, they like to do one side at a time because they don't want you to bite your tongue off.
Hey, Sid.
That's why they tend to do one side at a time. But yeah, no. So it's interesting. No, the reason I was back to the X-rays. Not only do they have the 360 machine, they have this new handheld X-ray machine. It looks like a small vacuum cleaner kind of thing, and they just can hand hold that and angle it and take X-rays with it.
And they didn't get behind the lead shielding? Okay.
No, evidently it uses such a little amount and in a focused direction that they're not particularly worried.
I mean, I had the one mounted on the wall that they slid over and plunked it down, and it's okay, hold your breath. I can't help it, I'm going to gag anyway. So
I mean, in the old days where they would put the film in a holder and stick it back in there.
Oh,
you it had like a bite stick that came out of it.
That would be the way I die. It was choking to death on X-ray film. Yes.
Yeah, I hated those and the whole hold still thing. And I eventually said, "Will you shut up and stop telling me to hold still? It adds a couple seconds to the time. I know what you want me to do. Just go.
Run, push the button."
Yeah. Stop wasting time telling me to hold still.
Hey, Sid.
Yeah.
I always eat graham crackers and milk when I have dental work.
Sorry, I missed that.
That works.
It's really good. I like it.
I know when they did my post and my implant, I basically didn't have a tooth there for about 4 months while it was healing and make sure the sinus floor didn't change and all that crap.
Yeah, they've been seeing me every 2 weeks. It was weird though. It was 33,005, which was an add-on 2,000 if I wanted an anesthesiologist. Otherwise, they were just going to give me oral stuff, and I'm like, I'm cheap. I'm not that cheap.
No, I've never been put out for any of it. In fact, some of this stuff I've had done when I had fillings replaced, no Novocaine.
Well,
And
I never take locals. I'll take the needle more than I
No,
like
the needle. I repeat, just drill through the nerve. Go ahead. And then when they tried to take X-rays, they had to numb my mouth up.
See, when I was small, my grandmother.
I couldn't do that, but the topical bothered me more than the needle going in.
Well, they try and limit the topical because it does feel like your throat is closing down.
Well, it always gets on your lips and on your tongue.
Yeah.
And it's a pain. It's a pain in the butt. Right now, I'm numb down to my chin.
Dude.
They said it can take up to 3 or 4 months to fully come back, for the nerves to fully come back.
What did they do? Nail the nerve?
Well, when they take out I had all the teeth taken out.
Okay, all right.
Originally, at first, my nose was dumb. Most of the top has come back.
Yeah, I've never experienced that. I mean, I had a bout of Bell's palsy for a bit when I had an infection on one side, and it pinched the nerve where it goes through the edge of the jaw, and then this side got all, it was kind of weird. And the doctor I was seeing said, "Oh, you have Bell's palsy," and the other doctor there name was Dr. Bruce Bell, and I said, "Is this something your coworker cooked up?" And she said, "No, it's a real thing."
Yeah, it's weird. But it's all around weird stuff. But it was good to get it done, and I needed to do that. I had planned it before the pandemic.
Wow.
And I went to Dr. Death first. I call him that because my dentist said he would have killed me. His idea was to break the upper jaw completely because he said it wasn't wide enough to put the
Come on. Yeah.
And he was going to put a screw thing in, and every day I would tighten it a little bit. And the regular dentist said it would have killed you because at your age, because he said it would kill in something like 6 weeks. This guy who wanted to do it, and the dentist it's not going to heal in 6 months.
Help, and you probably get infected too.
And he wanted 71,000 to do that, not counting anything else, just to do that.
Wow.
A surgeon guy, and as I said, the dentist said he's out of his mind. That a person over 60, if you did that, it would take forever to heal.
Yeah.
And it might not even ever heal right. So you certainly don't want to do that.
So if you're going to start breaking that kind of stuff, then you're going to be on antibiotics, and who knows what other things you're going to get.
They put me on a course of antibiotics and a course of anti-inflammatories.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like 5 days of the one and 6 of the other.
I'm surprised they used anti-inflammatories with a like a blood. Well, for me, it's for blood clots, not necessarily bleeding.
Yeah. It was to keep the swelling down, so they did that. And then I have a mouth rinse stuff. And then they gave me the 600 milligram ibuprofens, and they gave me narcotic stuff.
Oh yeah, hydrocodone. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't take that anymore.
Of the bottle, I took one, just one, and that was it.
And you probably forgot to take 2 Dulcolax with it too.
I don't even know what that is.
Anytime you take those painkillers, you should also take a stool softener and 2 laxatives, and have milk of magnesia standing by.
Oh, shit.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
You may have no pain, but you'll also end up with a concrete plug.
That would not be good.
It is not definitely. I took 2 pain pills when I had my shoulder surgery, and I swear I'll never take one of those again. That was worse than the pain from the shoulder. And when I left with my rotator cuff, when I left the hospital, they lost, when I changed clothes, the towel that was underneath this cooling pad. This had this cooling pad with a bucket of ice, and you plug it in, and it circulates water around and keeps your shoulder from swelling down. Only problem was I was putting all this ice in there, and it was cold enough, but then I started getting more and more pain after the nerve block wore off at 12 hours after my surgery, which is about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in pain. I said, well, we weren't supposed to look at this for 24 hours, but we're going to pull this back and take a look at it. My whole shoulder was purple from frostbite.
Oh, geez.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I definitely said, I'm taking that Advil that I'm not supposed to take. The Advil worked fine. The hydrocodone didn't take the edge off at all, just caused a little stoppage. Big stoppage, yes.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a great idea. I had to wear this head wrap thing with ice packs on the sides.
Yeah.
And
The
it-
bucket
it's in-
thing was, yeah, the bucket was a nice idea. I mean, I haven't seen it used since, but I mean, it's like a rubber mat with a couple hoses running through it. You could easily use it to keep a laptop cool.
There you go. There you go.
And it runs on a little tiny 5-volt power pack and circulates water through this hose. And you just put ice in the water and it makes cold water. And it's quite cold. Got frostbite. Yep. So I guess it worked.
You probably know this. You look like you have an afro.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Except the afro stays behind when I move.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every once in a while I'll take that off, but sometimes it just, it's like an awe of superiority there,
Yeah, my friend Josh has this image of a kangaroo that looks like it's looking at him right in the face next to him.
He's got a bloody roo in his house?
There you go. But yeah, it was 48 hours of the ice, and after that, heat was what they said to do.
Well, I'm glad that you've gotten through that portion of it, and you're coming back to the land of the living. And then after you get your new teeth, you still have to continue soft food.
Well, it's not about which teeth. It's giving the 12 additional weeks for the bone to finish.
To finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what these teeth are fairly solid.
I know when they took the implant in, they said, well, we can pack this with different kinds of calcium chips because your body is going to pull calcium from other sources to re-knit the bone. And the choices that he had was cow bone chips or cadaver chips. They basically bones from dead people packed in your mouth. Yes. Oh, and you're taking calcium supplements, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this isn't from the mouth. This is from the finger. The hand doctor said to take.
Oh, yeah.
He said to take these, vitamin D's, vitamin C's, and A's.
Yeah. The D is the most important with the calcium, but that can also make you have to be careful in your vitamin D levels as well if your proclivity is toward making kidney stones.
I've been taking these for over a year now. When I heard that D was a good thing to take to avoid COVID, they don't know why that's true, but for some reason D is helpful in avoiding COVID infections.
Well, we have never had. Neither one of us have ever tested positive on all of their exposures we've had. Now double vax, double boosted, probably ready for the new booster soon. But and we both take D. My wife takes 1,000. I take 4,000.
Yeah, and then the C's.
Are you taking more than 500?
Each of these is 250.
Okay, because if you continue to take vitamin C for a long time and then you stop taking it, your body will develop scurvy.
Uh-oh.
So you're better off to take it like every other day or every third day, so your body doesn't get used to having excess amount of vitamin C that it has to shed.
Arr, matey, scurvy?
Scurvy. Yeah, people were developing scurvy after they were taking mega doses of vitamin C, and then they stopped taking them, and the body said, well, it's got used to shedding 10,000 units of vitamin C a day. Okay, just shed it. We're never in. Oh, guess what? We need vitamin C. Yeah, scurvy symptoms.
I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, that's one of the few. I mean, most of your vitamins, your body can only absorb so much, and then the rest is, thrown away. Only of the ones you mentioned, vitamin A is poisonous in certain high dosages.
Yeah, that's what it always reminded me of all the mice testing they did.
Well, they didn't have to test mice.
Equivalent of these massive amounts.
Some explorers once tasted polar bear liver, and that has like millions of units of vitamin A, and it was almost toxic to them. Interesting.
It didn't do any good for the polar bear either.
It sure didn't do so well to the polar bear. They meet up with another polar bear, he'd probably take them to task.
Can I flip the tech stuff?
Sure, go ahead.
I mentioned, so I got these Wi-Fi bulbs, and they're working fairly well. I can say things like, "Hey Google, set family room lights to 30%."
Yeah.
And it just got dimmer in here. But with Alexa, I have old account Alexas and new account Alexas. Remember, I said I had a Prime now.
Yeah, you have
still have the non-Prime.
Okay.
I cannot figure out any way in this world to move stuff between accounts easily. I have all my rules, all my setups, and I don't want to have to recreate everything again, and I can't find any way in the world to just.
I don't think you can move it. I think you have to recreate the rules. However, for you to move a device, I think you have to unprovision it on one and then reprovision it on the other.
You do. I did that with one. I took the Echo Show and moved it to the Prime account, and everything on there, it didn't know anything. And
so what kind of devices do you have for the control? Do you have external devices? Like, is it like a brand name of the devices, or?
No, they're called KH Hun brand.
Okay, so these are just the smart light bulbs.
Yeah, they're Wi-Fi Bluetooth, actually.
Okay, because I have my devices that I use are Wemo. And the Wemo devices only run on 2.4 gigahertz.
They all do.
So that's one of the downsides. You have better coverage, but you don't need as much throughput, but they're more subject to interference from the guy next door. So you have to try and position it where the Wemo device has visibility of the access point proper. And sometimes if I have a difficulty trying to turn it on and off with Google, I have to go into the Wemo app and see if there's something like it needed to be updated.
You know, every time I hear that name, Ed, I want to go in the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. Because there's a Wemo way,
Wemo way, yes. I'm not sure. I think they're still in business. I haven't been able to find their controls on a discount lately. They used to sell them at a discount at Costco. So I laid into a supply, and I misplaced at least two of the outlets somewheres with Christmas stuff. I just haven't relocated them again. They're in the basement somewheres. They will come up for air one day. But I contemplated putting more of them in. I mean, I use them for Christmas lights, and I also use them for my normal lights that I have that I want to automatically turn on at sunset. Boom, it turns on at sunset. No worrying about clock changing or anything else with those. They turn on when they're supposed to, and it's not based on the light level either. And then they turn off at 12:02 because I said to. And that's the rule.
Yeah, I have routines. I have the good night routine, the good morning routine. Which
Oh, so you set them all up so when you do the G word, it can automatically set them all on or set them all off. Okay.
Well, it'll do that, but then it'll turn the bedroom light on at the same time these are turned off. Turn off the television, turn on, give me the weather for tomorrow, remind me of stuff coming up tomorrow.
Right.
Set the thermostat to night temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So it will do all of those.
You don't have any if this then that stuff?
I do not. I
Okay.
have an account and I used to use it a lot, but then they went pro, and a lot of the stuff you have to pay if you want to use it for that.
Right.
So I pretty much worked around all of that stuff that I used to do.
If I wanted to leave my QNAP up all the time, I could put some of my stuff on the server on that and let it be the local jurisdiction of when things turn on and off, but never got around to that.
What is weird is the Pixel phone. One of the bedtime commands is put the Pixel 6a in silent in do not disturb mode. Some mornings it'll come just fine and it'll say turning off do not disturb mode on Pixel 6a, and other mornings it'll come up and say I can't find a device to turn off do not disturb. And the phone is always in its charger in the same spot.
Oh, wow. Do you have any problem with the charger and the adaptive battery logic?
I haven't.
Because I know that after it thinks it knows your routine, you can plug it into the charger and it won't start charging. It'll wait until sometime like it figures, oh, you're not going to use this phone before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I don't have to start charging it until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then it'll be charged up by 10. And then you pick it up at 8:30 and it's only got 74% charge.
Yeah, the LG notebook actually has max charge mode to lengthen battery life, where it only charges to 80% instead of full.
Oh, I know that my old HPs, my Elite books, they would say if it was below 92%, it'll charge it. But if it's above 92 and you plug it in, or it's been plugged in, I don't even attempt to charge it.
In the old days, you just pull the battery out, put in a different battery. These days, you don't have that option.
Well, the nice thing about that is I'm still on this original battery on this unit that I think I've had since 2016. And my other machine is a 2013 vintage when I picked it up, and its battery is still fine too. I mean, it's still probably good for at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But by doing that, it hardly charges the battery, doesn't consume battery charge cycles. Oh, here's a good one for you. You're replacing batteries in a device like a cordless Dremel. So that's new lithium battery pack. You get the right dimension cells. You don't get the ones with the security fuse inside of it, so they're not too long. You have the right battery pack, and you get there and you got something that needs to be soldered to the solder tabs. What do you use? And there's no solder tabs on the end of the battery. Well, you end up prying off the old welded solder tabs from the previous battery pack. And then when you try and solder it onto the new cells, the trick is use a little bit of acid core solder. Because if you use rosin core solder, it will never stick to stainless. But if you use acid core solder, you can sweat it to the, you can put a little bit on the bottom of the thing, push it down, and just hold a soldering iron on it, and it'll solder right wet and solder to the thing, and you're done. Yeah, the one place that you can use acid core solder in electronics work.
Yeah, but how many people would have the acid core? The only time I've known acid core or acid soldering goes back to my father, who was foreman of a sheet metal shop.
Well, no, you want to know another place where it is? Plumbing. That's all acid core.
Really?
Yeah, the plumbing paste is all acid core.
Wow.
So if you get the little tiny container that it's the nice clear stuff, not the ugly brown stuff. Basically, it's nothing more than zinc chloride. So if you got zinc and hydrochloric acid, you can make your own solder paste because that's what's in it, zinc chloride.
Didn't they have a stuff like you use solder with this other stuff?
Flux, yes, and and that's the other way you could do it. You either have acid core solder, which has a flux inside of the solder itself, or you use a flux stick. And many times the best thing to do is to put the flux on the two pieces you want to join and solder to one side and then push the solder bead against the other and apply heat, and then it sweats together and you're good. And the other thing that you ever want to do, if you ever want to solder aluminum, you can solder aluminum. Most people trying to solder aluminum just end up with a little bead and it never sticks. I can solder aluminum with rosin core solder. The secret is you need an aluminum, like a dental pick or a probe of some sort, and you heat up a blob of solder on the aluminum surface, get it molten, and then scratch through the solder with the stainless steel pick, and it will sweat to the aluminum. Yep. Learn something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of stuff that people would say, yeah, you have to be a double E to do that. No, you just have to experiment a lot. I used to build computers a long time ago, back when not quite the, well, actually I did have an 8080 mainframe S100 box for a bit. It was my brother's. He donated it to me, an 8-inch floppy disk drive. That is no longer with me. I was finally able to part with it. However, I still have in a box somewhere downstairs an Ohio Scientific Superboard 2, a 8 kilobyte 6502 based computer, which it was expanded to 32 kilobytes. And the floppy disk interface was unconventional. We didn't read any other kind of floppies, but the floppy disk was controlled by a PIA and an ACIA, which used 74 123 one shots at about 250 kilohertz to encode a ACIA format on the floppy disk track. And it had to manually step between the tracks with a timing loop. Click, 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 click. But I figured a way to fix that so that when they would see the index hole, it knew it was already on the other track. And then a lot of changes to that. I was able to power down so it didn't have to run the floppy disk drive all the time. It used to have the floppy disk motor was always running continuously. That's the way they designed it. And I made it so it would actually time out and actually shut down the floppy disk motor. And then when it had to write again, it would turn it back on. Long time ago. This is 1979. Yes. And then I got my first PC in 1982, and I haven't looked back since. Interesting. Okay. Any other desired topics that you think you'd like to see coming up? I know that Sanford still wants me to do HDMI, but that's a pretty big topic.
I would
But
say
I'm still
you
looking
need
at it.
to look into primarily the USB-C and a lot of the new versions of USB that are coming on newer equipment, like USB 3.2, Gen 1, and USB 4.
Well, I don't think they finally voted on USB 4 yet, but we'll see. I'll look and see what I can find.
It looks close, but it's
You're muted, Bob. Yeah.
What I meant to say, USB, I have found they have been changing their terminology, their naming conventions.
Right.
And so instead of going USB 3.0 or 3.1, this was a problem I had when I was choosing and setting up my new computer. It actually, it used the new nomenclature, 3.2 Gen 1. I think that translates into 3.0.
Yeah, it might be. I think I remember seeing that.
And they, in their specs at the Micro Center, said it was 3.1. It's not. It's 5 Gbps, not 10. But there is an open PCIe 4 slot, which is capable of 16x, but the card you plug in is PCIe 4 4x. And it's okay. That's perfectly normal. Perfectly normal. It means I have plenty of lanes to be able to do this. And there are 2 buses on it, and it's actually 3.2 Gen 2.
Right.
I don't think its C ports are actually Thunderbolt per se, but it's hard to say because 3.2 Gen 2 times 2, I think, is what Thunderbolt is.
It might be. What is the power difference between the two in terms of how much power can be delivered?
It can deliver 15 whatever.
15 watts.
15 watts,
Yeah.
as opposed to the 5 watts of USB 3.0.
Well, I thought there was the version of it that would do 30 watts.
There is.
Okay.
And USB 4 is going to be, I think, somewhere in upwards of 30 watts. But
Yeah.
you really wouldn't want to deal with the cooling and power supply requirements to do something like that.
Well, it's sort of like some of the inline power adapters for Ethernet. I mean, you have 802.3 and then AF and then AG and all the other ones. So is this a 45 watt adapter instead of a 15.4 or is this more? Yes.
But anyway, there is an add-on card that has 2 buses on it.
Mhm.
And if you only plug in one drive to each bus, it can get the full 10 or maybe it's only 8 Gbps.
Okay. So what are you driving that fast along this bus other than the hard drive?
These are external drives and SSDs and enclosures.
Okay. So you're using it for like a RAID array or something in internal cabling.
No, it's backup drives and system drives for Linux.
Ah, okay. All right.
Linux doesn't need anything better than USB 3.0, but it prefers 3.1 upward.
Okay.
Thunderbolt is totally a luxury.
All right.
If the Thunderbolt enclosure works with the C-type ports on this card, I can report back.
Okay. Well, let me know if it does.
At one of these meetings.
Okay.
I can let you folks know how it works out. In October at Westside, Sanford says it's okay if I unload a little bit about my experience with this new PC.
Okay. Cool.
By that time, I will have had time to check this out and see whether it even works.
Or what kind of errors you find with it.
Yeah, if there are. If there are
with
errors.
great speed comes great responsibility.
Yes. I/O errors, I find the problem is with either cables that are too long, cables that are joined to other cables, or hubs, because you get data collisions with hubs.
Okay. Yes, I would think so.
And sometimes there's not enough power, even if it's a powered hub, with USB 3.1.
See, I have a USB 3 hard disk cradle with a built-in hub, but I have no idea what version of USB 3 it is. It's a little bit dated, and I know that the backup utilities couldn't support it with the versions that I started with. Only later did they finally support those devices, because I was looking for some, this will be USB 3. This will be a fast backup. Oh, it's not working at all. That's a bummer.
Yeah, it's like when it works, it's great to have these various USB add-ons, but when they don't work, you can corrupt a file system on a drive. and then you have to do a repair of the
Right.
file system. Usually that'll bring it back. Usually.
Usually.
But anyway, I did have to do that a couple or 3 times with some external drives
Ooh.
before I figured I'd better be doing direct connect to the port.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
At
Right.
least if it's large files or if it's a backup operation.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm going to have more ports, but I would only want to use 2 of them at most at a time so as not to slow them too much.
Right.
Because
Okay.
they share the lanes, they share the bandwidth.
Right.
But
So
it's
do you know what kind of processor is actually on the card that supports this, or is this
ASM. It's an
okay?
ASM and it's an advanced one. The only bottleneck would be if the motherboard doesn't have the right configuration and
Yeah.
doesn't have enough lanes to the processor. The computer's processor is Alder Lake 12th gen, so it's got 20 lanes. It's fine.
Okay. Cool.
Depends on what else is sharing those lanes, though.
Well, your memory
Yep.
and how many interleave memory? Because I know when you get into much larger memory modules, who was that? Brian Dipert was talking about some massive amounts of memory and the number of lanes that he needed to support it.
Yeah, but I'm only doing 16 gig,
Yeah. Okay.
so I'm fine.
You should be fine.
It's just I don't want to have a lot of stuff hooked up to the USB 3.0 ports when I'm using the 3.1 add-on, because that will cause problems.
Okay. Don't plug your keyboard in. It runs everything
Well,
slow.
the keyboard is USB 2. The keyboard
Yes.
is USB 2, and that's totally different. It's a different header.
That's in a different spot. Yes.
Yeah. And it's got an internal header for more USB 3.
Well, I'm just wondering when you plug in a USB 1 or 2 device into the USB port on a laptop that's a USB 3 port, does that slow all the ports down?
It slows down anything attached to the same bus.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the daughter card will have its own buses.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay.
So that's not a big problem. USB 3.0 won't slow down a daughter board that is plugged into a separate PCIe slot,
Mm-hmm.
because that slot has its own lanes.
Right, but I'm not sure how they do it in some laptops. You know, I know you can go and look
Don't
in
know
Device
that.
Manager and you can see the different controllers and okay, then maybe I'm assuming that this is on a different controller. It's on its own port. We'll see what that does.
Well, this is a tower, so it's
Yeah.
it's a full-size tower, full-size motherboard.
Okay.
It's an Asus motherboard. It should be just fine, depending on how it's configured
Right.
for this slot.
Well, you'll still have Asus support as long as it doesn't get invaded anytime soon.
Actually, it would be Micro Center support because it's power spec. The computer
okay.
is. The
All right.
motherboard is an Asus board, but the way it's configured is Micro Center.
Okay, cool.
And sometimes they know what they're talking about, sometimes they don't.
All right.
Sounds like everything. One other topic suggestion:
Sure.
PoE stuff.
Oh, okay.
I mean, because I was looking, there's now PoE, PoE plus, PoE plus plus, and PoE plus plus type 4.
Right. That's not their right names, but okay.
You might also, in that kind of vein, PCIe specs that govern your NVMe SSDs, because when you start getting to certain levels, you got to have heat spreaders, heat sinks, fans,
Mhm.
and you may actually get to a point where you got to have liquid cooling.
You have to use liquid cooling, you're doing something wrong because that is a single point of failure. When one of those connectors corrodes and it starts leaking out its lifeblood.
That may be, but they're already.
And you know those are all metric fittings.
they're all saying that PCIe 5, the speeds that you may attain are so high, the heat generated, you're not going to suffice with just a good heat sink fan assembly like you might have on a CPU. And you
Hmm.
may have to actually have liquid cooling, just like CPUs, memory modules, and graphic cards.
Or what they'll do is they'll have something that has a phase change liquid or something inside of a sealed system that can transfer from a small heat sink to a large heat sink and then put a bigger fan behind it.
You're assuming all of this is going to be in silicon, but with the newer alloy that they're proposing for replacing the silicon, you'd have much better handling of these conditions.
You mean like boron hydrate or something?
Yeah.
There's something even more advanced.
I thought that was the new one they were talking about.
That
Could
might
be
be.
wrong. Yeah, I thought it was boron hydride.
I know it's
Could
boron
be.
something.
Yeah, okay, well, anyway, it's supposed to have much better heat dissipation
Oh, yeah.
characteristics. And it doesn't generate the heat in the first place because the resistance is lower.
Yes. Well, and then it's also can be made a lot smaller too.
Because of all these characteristics.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it just has.
Cubic boron arsenide.
There you are. Cubic boron arsenide.
Yes, cubic. Got to be cubic.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Borg term. All right.
It's just the way the crystalline structure is.
Yep. Well, you could probably pick some up by dropping over at MIT and hey, I'd like to try that new boron arsenide.
Oh, they already have boards and they have boards and devices they're already working on with those.
Okay,
over at
cool.
MIT. But I can't afford their prices.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I look at my time here. We have run to the bewitching hour, so
yeah.
I will you can go ahead and shut down the recording, Tim.